Alright, guys, I hope you're doing great today. This is our chapter number 6, in which we are going to learn about Azure Virtual Networking Services. So, in the previous chapter, we discussed about the compute services like virtual machines, scale sets, availability sets, Azure functions, and also Azure container instances, Azure Kubernetes services. So we had a general overview of all those compute services. In this lecture, we are going to have a quick overview of the networking services that are offered by Azure. So before we get started, make sure that you subscribe to DevOps Molvi. So what is the headline of today's lecture? And it is Azure Virtual Networks enable Azure resources to communicate with each other. Guys, in our university, in our graduation, you know that we learn about communication. We learn about how multiple computers, multiple systems can talk with each other. They can communicate with each other if they are on the same network. Network is important for systems communication. Networking is important if we want to access systems. If there are 10 or 20 systems in a lab, I can access easily system 1 from system 2 or system 2 from system 3 and vice versa. So that is why communication is important between the systems so that we can share data and also we can transfer files among different computers, different systems without any hazards. So that is why networking is required in Azure as well, so that our virtual machines can talk to each other via private network, and we can also use them for the global traffic or the global internet communication as well. So what is an Azure Virtual Network? In order to spin up a virtual machine, we have to use a virtual network. An Azure Virtual Network is a service that provides the fundamental building block for our private network in Azure. If I want to have all my virtual machines privately accessible within a network, I can create an Azure Virtual Network. A virtual network is similar to a traditional network. That's why I have explained you the example of any office, any lab where there are 20 or 30 computers and they are networked together so that they can easily communicate with each other. Similar is the case of virtual machines on the cloud. With Azure Virtual Network, all those virtual machines are on the same network so that they can also talk, they can also communicate with each other via a private communication mechanism. And this is why it is also important that if we want to communicate our virtual machines privately, we can create an Azure Virtual Network. It brings extra benefits of the Azure infrastructure such as scale, availability, and isolation. All resources in a virtual network can communicate outbound with the internet by default. So whether it is a private communication or public communication, we can use Azure Virtual Network so that our virtual machines can also interact with the internet. And also, guys, there are other perks or benefits of Azure infrastructure. We can scale our network up and down. We can get IP addresses. We can also get our network isolated from other networks. So this is virtual network. Just like a traditional network, we can use Azure Virtual Network to spin up our virtual machines. They can be isolated, they can interact with the internet, and also if we want our virtual machines not to be publicly accessible, we can also do that in Azure Virtual Network. Yes, and that's how it is possible with public and private endpoints. As the name says, the public endpoint, which is publicly available, and private endpoints, which is privately accessible. Public endpoints have a public IP address and can be accessed from anywhere in the world. Now, guys, there is no doubt about that. If it is a public IP, what does this mean? It means that this public IP can be accessed from anywhere in the world. And a private IP address can also be accessed privately. I mean to say, we have to use whether a VPN or we have to use any console. Private endpoints exist within a virtual network and have a private address from within the address space of that virtual network. So there are two different types of endpoints: public, which are publicly accessible, like public IP address, and private endpoints are privately accessible within a virtual network. Why use an Azure Virtual Network? What are the benefits? What are the features, in other words, of Azure Virtual Network? The first is communication of Azure resources with the internet. If I want to run virtual machines in a virtual network and I want to host my applications on those virtual machines, I want to have those applications accessible over the internet, then I have to use Azure Virtual Network. And also communication between Azure resources. If I have 10 virtual machines and also I want to have a secure communication between those 10 virtual machines, I can create a virtual network and I will use that virtual network to spin up all those 10 virtual machines. If all those virtual machines are on the same network, it means that they can communicate with each other without any issues. And also, guys, we can use Azure Virtual Network for communication with on-prem resources. Okay, if my virtual machines are on-prem and I want to access virtual machines on the cloud, I can use a virtual network. And also, we can filter unwanted network traffic, we can route network traffic, and also we can integrate with other Azure services using Azure Virtual Network. So these are some of the great benefits of having Azure Virtual Network. It is impossible without any Azure Virtual Network to have our virtual machines accessible over the internet, to have our applications running on the Azure virtual machines to be accessible over the internet. It means that whether we want to privately or publicly access our virtual machines or applications running on those virtual machines, we have to use Azure Virtual Network. So there must be a question in your mind that how my virtual machines communicate with each other, how my resources like containers or Kubernetes clusters can talk with each other on Azure. So there are actually two ways. The first we have already discussed, it is Azure Virtual Network. We can create a virtual network and when we can bring all the services together on that same virtual network. When all the services, when all the resources are on the same network, it means that they can communicate with each other. And also we can use service endpoints like public endpoints or private endpoints. So these are the two ways how our resources communicate with each other, whether we want to use virtual networks or service endpoints. And in my recommendation, the most easiest and quickest way is to create a virtual network which enables secure communication between Azure resources. And also our resources can communicate with the internet, and also our resources at the same time can talk with our on-prem infrastructure. And the other resource communication method is to have service endpoints. Enable secure communication among Azure services. Privately, we can use those endpoints so that our multiple resources can talk with each other. All right, Azure VPN Gateway. Now, you must be thinking that how is it possible that my resources can communicate with each other privately without exposing them to the internet or publicly? So we can use Azure VPN Gateway. We can connect our on-prem networks to Azure through site-to-site VPNs, which is like a remote branch office. And then we can connect our virtual machines on Azure Virtual Networks from anywhere. A VPN is actually a tunnel. If I want to securely access my virtual machines on the cloud, I can use Azure VPN Gateway, and it has no upfront cost. There are no termination fees, and we just have to pay only for what we use. The traffic would always remain encrypted. This is actually the major point that I wanted to tell you, that our traffic, our communication would be highly secure and encrypted, and we can use this VPN gateway at no additional cost. So we must use it, right? We must use it so that we can securely access our virtual machines on the cloud from our on-prem data center as well. So Azure provides site-to-site VPNs, and it is just like I have multiple branches in my country, and from any head office, I want to remotely access all the systems of all those branches. Then I must use site-to-site VPNs so that my communication with all those systems is highly secure and encrypted. And also there is one important service in Azure networking is ExpressRoute. And ExpressRoute enables a direct connection to Microsoft's global network bypassing the public internet. Did you get it? No? So actually, it is just like that. I am directly connected with Azure Global Network using ExpressRoute, whether I am from Pakistan, from India, Australia, or Asia. It means that when I use ExpressRoute, it will give us the feeling that I am in the Azure availability zone, and I'm directly connected with Azure's global infrastructure. My connection, my laptop is directly connected with Azure global network. So I have to use this ExpressRoute service. In simple words, if I want our computer to connect directly with Azure global network, we can use ExpressRoute. This direct connection aims to enhance reliability, speed, and security for our cloud-based applications and data. Just like if I share the example of any banking applications. For instance, if I am running secure, highly sensitive banking applications, financial operation, FinOps applications on Azure, and I don't want my data to travel on the internet. I just want to work on my data, my files directly on Azure. So I want my computer, my laptop, or my network should be directly connected with Azure's network. I can use ExpressRoute. It will bypass the internet, and I would be directly connected with Azure's global network. So this is what ExpressRoute used for. So there are more additional features of ExpressRoute like connectivity to Microsoft Cloud services across all regions in the geographical region, global connectivity to Microsoft services, dynamic routing, and built-in redundancy in every peering location for high reliability. And we can also use dynamic routing between our network and Microsoft via border gateway protocol. And these are actually the terms that are used in ExpressRoute. Since we are going to directly connect with Azure's global network, we can use it is just like we are physically in the data center. It is just like we have bypassed all the internet traffic, and we have a direct connection with no hazards, with no issues with Microsoft global network. And guys, one more thing, it is super fast because ExpressRoute Direct allows to connect directly to Microsoft Global Network at a high bandwidth connectivity up to 100 gigabytes per second for scenarios like massive data migration. Now you can think about it, 100 GB per second is the speed, bandwidth, and it would be really fast. It would be really secure and reliable. So that's what ExpressRoute Direct is used for. If I want myself to be directly connected with Azure Global Network, I can use this service. After that, guys, we can use security groups and peering. The security groups are actually the virtual firewalls. We can block certain ports, we can block IP addresses, malicious IP addresses using security groups. We can create a network security groups with rules to filter inbound traffic and outbound traffic from virtual machines and subnets. Just like I told you, security groups are virtual firewalls. They will filter the network traffic. Every malicious traffic would be filtered coming in or out from our virtual machines. We can link virtual networks together by using virtual network peering. If there are 10 or 20 different virtual networks, we can peer them together. We can make them friends, and it would become collectively a single big virtual network because all the virtual networks would be peered together. Peering allows two virtual networks to connect directly to each other. Just like we have friends, we have our peers, so we can have two different virtual networks to be peered, to be connected together. After that, guys, we have Azure DNS. If I want to use the DNS domain name services of Azure, just like we have Route 53 on AWS, Cloud DNS on GCP, we have Azure DNS. And I can register my domains. I can create domains on Azure, just like I have given the example. If I want to have abc.com, I can use Azure DNS and I can register my domains using Azure DNS. It is a DNS hosting service for domain names, and it also provides name servers for name resolutions using Microsoft Azure infrastructure. We can register full quality domain names like DevOpsMolvi.com on Azure DNS. And also we can manage DNS records, A record, NS records, MX records. So we can use Azure DNS for our domain records as well. Now, if I want to see the virtual network, you can navigate here, virtual network. And now this is the symbol of a virtual network. We can create virtual networks, and virtual network is used to securely connect your Azure resources with each other. Connect your virtual network to your on-prem networks using an Azure VPN gateway or ExpressRoute. So if I have an on-prem infrastructure data center and I want to connect with my Azure resources on the cloud, I can use Azure VPN gateway or ExpressRoute. So if I search here ExpressRoute, and yes, this is actually ExpressRoute Direct. You can see I have shared the information that ExpressRoute Direct provides 100 Gbps or 10 Gbps connectivity, which supports active connectivity at scale, and it gives us the ability to connect directly with Microsoft's global network. And finally, I can search for Azure DNS. Okay, and yeah, this is Azure DNS, and I can register, I can create my domains on Azure DNS using Azure DNS. So back to virtual network, and this is virtual network, and also we can see virtual network gateways. So that's how we can navigate to different services, guys, on Azure. So Azure VPN Gateway connects your on-prem networks to Azure through site-to-site VPNs in a similar way that you set up and connect to a branch office, a remote branch office, and all these are Azure networking services. So we have already discussed the major ones like Azure Virtual Networks, Virtual Network Gateways, VPN Gateways, ExpressRoute Direct, Azure DNS. So that's it for today's lecture. I will see you in our Azure storage services in the upcoming lecture. Make sure that you subscribe DevOps Molvi. Have a good one. And still, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. Bye.